Hey guys, my name's Phil from Learning Online, and today I'm sitting here with none other than Mr. Luke Dyson. How are you, buddy?
Good, man. Yourself?
Good to see you, man.
You too, man.
Thanks for having me down, man. Beautiful, beautiful tattoo studio here. Really excited to be able to chat to you today. For myself personally, I've got the benefit of being your friend, yeah? And, now, doing some business with you as well. So I actually have gotten bits and pieces, I would say, of your origin story, how you got into the industry and stuff as well. But what I was most interested to talk about today was, to get an understanding of tattooing the industry through your eyes, yeah? So why don't we start there, and then, we can get into, some other subjects, online learning, social media, the progression of the industry and stuff. But first and foremost, man, I think the best place to start the conversation is, with you.
Yep.
Yeah? Cool, man. Nice. All right. So, Lukey, tell me, man, when did you first want to get into tattooing? When did you first know that that was something you wanted to do?
I would have been about 16 years old, and I started to notice a lot of the rappers that I would listen to, they all had tattoos, and I seen NBA players with tattoos and AFL players were starting to get them. And I was drawn to the look. I had a cool edge to it. I don't know what it was, but I was just so obsessed with it. And at that point, I always was a drawer growing up. And I would always draw on my hands, my arms, and I'd have a book at school and I'd sit there and I'd continue to just I don't know, I love drawing clowns and pretty girls and stuff like that.
Yeah, nice.
Never knew that that actually was called Chicano, the style of art that I was doing. And one day I had my best mate's older brother come home, and he had a tattoo on his arm, and it was like a gangster looking clown holding a shotgun. And I was like, nice. That is so cool. I'm like, I want to be able to tattoo.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 16.
16, okay.
And I seen it and I'm like, where'd you get it? Who did it? And I was instantly obsessed. Yeah. And I'd never seen it before. So then I started researching the style itself, and I was like, where do I begin?
Yeah.
And I remember I wasn't old enough to get a tat at the time. Yeah. So then I was like, I can't book in with this guy to go watch him tattoo or asking questions. So I was kind of stuck in a position of where do I go from here if I want to make this a career?
Totally.
And randomly, I was in year 10 and we had an orientation day where we had the universities come down to the school, and they give you an idea of what you could do with your life, and they start throwing out a few ideas and a few options.
Okay.
And there was one guy in the class, I made a comment to one of the teachers who were telling us what we could do. I asked if there was anything to do with tattooing, and they actually laughed at me, and they're like, mate, that you'll go nowhere if that's what you want to do for a living. Gotcha. And at the end of that little class, we had a guy in there. He pulled me aside, and he was 16 as well, and he actually mentioned, he's like, man, I've seen there's this place in the city called Australian Tattoo Academy. It was this random little kind of in-person seminar where you do a little bit of training, and they kind of teach you a couple bits and pieces.
And were they common back then?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Well, to my understanding, no. Yeah. I had no idea. I didn't know anything other than, it was just very difficult to get into.
Yes.
So I seen that, and then I also spoke to a few different people, and I was going into tattoo shops asking for, jobs or asking for, apprenticeships, and just constantly rejected, constantly told no. And I'm just how do I make this work? Yeah. And then I just took it upon myself to basically buy a tattoo machine online, and because I was so eager, and it's my personality.
So did you get one off eBay?
Or I didn't know what I was doing, but I just went out of my way to buy something like that.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting the equipment, and I just kind of winged it. Just started practicing in my bedroom, and I started to play around with just certain designs on my legs, did a little bit of research on the internet. YouTube had just started back then, so I found a couple little videos where there was I could get some information, and it was all trial and error. So no guidance, no nothing. And then I sat there, and mistake after mistake I made on my leg. I eventually started to get a little bit more confident. I had kids at school who actually were letting me...
So when you're 17 at this time, or 16?
16 still. Yeah,
turning your own leg in your bedroom. Yeah. That's wild.
And then a few...
What did your parents think?
They were... my dad had tats, so he didn't really care.
Yeah, okay.
And my mum... I grew up in Melton, man. They didn't really care about too much, to be honest, bro. They were just like, do what you got to do,
I'm
mate.
just picturing my mum coming, running after me with the wooden spoon or something like that if I walked out of my bedroom with a tattoo.
Yeah. To be honest, I was actually at that point, I was tattooing my stepdad at our kitchen table. Like I was doing his sleeve, like I'm like sitting there just busting out, trying to do koi fish. It was pretty fun.
They were supportive.
They were.
Supportive. Okay.
So I was lucky enough to have them actually let me tattoo them, and they believed in what I wanted to do. And yeah, just kept on like practicing. And then at that point I was going to school and I was showing all the kids like what I did on my leg. And then everyone was like, man,
what was it? What was your first tattoo?
I actually wrote Dyson ink on my left leg.
You wrote Dyson ink?
Dyson ink, yeah. And then I got some stars, and then I started doing like koi fish. I tried to do dragons. I'm in the middle of lasering them off now because they actually look horrible. But back then it was cool, right?
No sentimental value, like
Nah. I want them gone because they look pretty trashy. They look like they were done in jail, to be honest.
That's hilarious.
But then, the kids at school, they started to say to me, they're like, can you tattoo me? And then I started practicing on them. It was like, obviously, I realistically wasn't allowed to do that. Like they were underage, but again, it was like, there's no rules. There was no regulations. There was no understanding of what's right, no understanding of what's wrong.
And like you said, you asked the teacher, what kind of pathway existed for tattooing, and you were laughed at.
Yeah. It was difficult.
Yeah.
So again, as I continued to tattoo, I got better and better and better. Still like wasn't great, but from where I started after 6 to 12 months, I managed to like build a little bit of a portfolio. Awesome. Luckily enough, I walked into a tattoo studio at that point. And I said to a guy, his name's Greg Hines, Beansy. He was actually like on the Bert Newton show. He was in the Guinness Book of Records for the world's longest tattoo session. He did 44 hours straight.
Wow.
So I landed on my feet in terms of working with an industry legend. And I walked in and I just said, can I have a job? And I showed him my legs. There was a bit of a backstory to it, but long story short, he gave me a job on the spot. Wow. Very, very lucky. And then just within a week after seeing him, I started tattooing in his shop. I still wasn't even 18. I was 17 years old. I looked so young. Like I was just a little kid, man. Had all pimples all on my face, and I'm just like trying to figure out, like, is this going to be the right career for me? But it wasn't a proper apprenticeship. Gotcha. I didn't do a traditional introduction. I didn't do, what a lot of people think you need to do as an apprentice. Mine was completely unorthodox. I just practiced at home, landed in a shop, and I know a lot of artists, that's how they've had their entry. Like it's very common for people to have that sort of entry where they've practiced at home and then they go in. And then there's also some people who do the traditional way where they,
Yeah, what is the traditional way in your mind or in your experience?
Well, I feel like my entry is traditional for some people. Yeah. And then there's another traditional entry where you go to a studio, you show your portfolio. If you're lucky enough to get an opportunity, they'll give you a chance. And then you've obviously got to do, what could have been, when I started, it was like 6 to 12 months of helping out around the shop, assisting, kind of like a bit of an unpaid internship where you're just assisting the artist, making their life easier. And in exchange, they will share skills and like help build you as an artist. And this could happen over 2 to 3 years. It was a very slow burner, but that introduction was designed to show if you're genuinely keen and if you're, made for the industry. That was the mentality behind it.
Okay. And I've heard some pretty wild stories, that you've shared bits and pieces of. Is there any of that you would want to talk about? Any of those experiences? Because from what I've come to understand, there is quite a bit of craziness in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What's in your mind? What are some of those crazy early on stories? Yeah, early on experiences.
Well, the first experience that I had that was absolutely insane, where it was actually, I was a little bit concerned for my safety at this point. It was when I was 6 months into working for my first boss, I took a sickie. It was I had to work 5 days a week. I was not allowed to leave early. It was I had to clock in and stay. And every client that would come in, I'd have to tattoo. He'd be like, if they come in at 9 o'clock at night with 3 people, you're staying here till 1 a.m. Wow. That's what it was. So it was and I hustled. I just said, yes, I'm here to learn.
17, what else have I got to do?
Yeah. And I was making bank at 17. I was making good coin as a 17-year-old.
Wait, hold on, were you still in school at this point?
No, I dropped out of school.
You dropped out, okay.
So I was motivated because I was making money and learning a great craft. Okay. And then it's the 6 month mark, I pulled a sickie and I got busted. I fully had to pretend I had a headache. I needed a day off. I was burnt out. I've come out of school to 5 days a week work. It was a lot, And a lot of artists know they're not normal tattoo, like tattoo artists work ridiculous hours.
Yes.
If you're tattooing and if you're busy. And they busted me lying. I said that I had a headache, but then one of the owners caught me on a date with my ex-girlfriend at La Porchetta in Melton. And then they drove past and seen me. And then I sent them a message and I'm kind of like, oh, look, I had some Nurofen, my headache went away. And then they were just like, mate, like, we need to have a chat. And I just said, maybe I should have a couple of days off and we'll touch base on this next week. And then he goes, mate, who are you to tell me what's going on and you're gonna have some time off? He's like, you're fucking fired. I was like, what? And then I went to the shop, at this point shitting myself because obviously everyone knows the tattoo industry, especially back then, there was a lot of stigma around. It's like, bikie ran or gang affiliated and all that sort of stuff. And they threatened to break my hands if they find out I'm tattooing at home. And I was 17, so I went in with my mum and my mum's there and I'm like a little kid, like trying to grab my equipment. Yeah, and I'm just like,
They're gonna break your hand.
Yes. And I'm just like, I was petrified. I didn't have a father figure around at the time to like help me out with anything like that. So, and I had no bigger brothers. I was just like a little kid who was so passionate about this industry, yet I had to sit there and go, do I listen and fold and deal with the fear and just like stay in my little shell and, not try fight for what I want to do?
Yes.
Or do I put my head down and keep working? And I chose to put my head down and keep working. And it's the best decision I've ever made. But that experience very early on, as time and time again, as I like ran into more roadblocks like that, I always chose the harder road and always like persevered and pushed through. And that's how I grew as an artist and grew as a person. Like I would never sit there and let anyone tell me what I can and can't do. I get up and I show up, and I've done that for now 15 years. And I feel like that's what's contributed to a lot of my success.
100%, man, definitely. And so when did you first transition from, like employee to, I suppose employer? Yeah, like, when were you, I suppose, tattooing for yourself and, like kind of owning the business yourself? Like, was it a studio or like?
Yeah, well, it was weird. Like my first 3 years, I was kind of like a bit lost. I was like, I got fired from that job, and then I like worked in a couple real average studios, in and out of working from my house. Yeah. I was like kind of lost. I didn't really have a sense of direction, and I didn't know where else to go because no big or good studios would accept me because I was, what they would call a scratcher. You know what I mean? Like I just had a shocking portfolio.
That term,
Scratcher. It gets thrown around quite a little bit.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
So, but then I landed on my feet with a guy called Gary Oates. He randomly actually came and seen me yesterday. He was a really, really great like mentor in some respect. My 3 years of tattooing that I had before I had someone truly interested in helping me, he took me under his wing and tidied up a lot of skills. He was a very hard boss, very, very hard boss. But I did a couple years with him, and then from there I landed in another studio which I had some great success with, and kind of played a little bit more of a senior role. Okay. Where I was like helping other people. At that point I was 5 years in, and then I started to feel a little bit more confident that maybe one day I could actually own my own studio. And then as time went on again, I got to the 9th year of tattooing, and I bit the bullet and just went and opened up my own shop. So that was in Avondale Heights, and it was a studio called M9. It was like a little street shop. It was nice. Okay. It was really, really cool.
Was it just you, or did you have other artists in there with you?
At the time when I first started, it was just me. So, but yeah, like leading up to that, like I hopped around and worked in a few different studios before I made the decision to actually go out on my own. For myself, I was like, I kind of wanted to just see how other people worked and operated, just so I could understand that when I go out on my own, I know exactly what to do and what not to do. I just feel like, the more experience in different businesses, the better. So leading up to that, I worked in probably 10 studios in Melbourne, some great shops, some not so great. And then, just went out on my own, and that was probably, it was one of the scariest things I had done, but at the same time, it was also, the best decision I made because it threw me in the deep end. And at that point I was tattooing 6 days a week and trying to run a business that slowly started to have more employees come to it.
Definitely.
And it was a difficult thing to navigate, but we found a way.
It's a big transition, isn't it? Yeah, like, because, I've found personally, like, in running a business, everything kind of falls on you. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, so you go from, maybe a tattoo artist to accountant to, admin to, public relations, marketing. Yeah. How have you gone, kind of managing, because I mean, you guys are obviously doing an amazing job here with Omnia, and, like how do you go with managing, those different hats on a day-to-day basis?
I think it's quite difficult switching. Like I'm a obviously a tattoo artist and I understand how tattoo artists
You
work.
walked into a tattoo, and I can imagine at the same time you're thinking about the business.
Yeah, I'll be sitting here tattooing and I'm like scanning the room, listening to how people are listening to the conversations, listening to just everything that's going on, making sure everyone's treating the customers with respect, making sure they're providing great customer service, making sure just everyone's having, you know, a nice, good conversation. Sometimes it gets controversial, but we read the room and pick the crowd. But I always want to make sure that the vibe and environment's always good. So as I'm tattooing, I could be doing a crazy detailed portrait, but my mind is still trying to scan the room. It is hard.
Yeah.
But I've taught myself to kind of relax and I'll be like, okay, 11 till 7, I'm a tattoo artist, you know, 7 till maybe 8:30 at night, I'm going to work on the business. In the morning, I do a little bit of work on the business. Like I've got to switch in between roles, but even like on the floor during the day, knowing when I've got to be a leader and be a boss, if I've got to help someone or if I've got to, you know, just have a conversation about something that could be difficult with someone, like I'm getting better at switching. At the start, it was very difficult. It was extremely difficult to do because it was, you know, I learned early on that I'm a little bit of a people pleaser with a lot of things. And I was always concerned about how the staff would feel if I had to address a problem. But I understand as a boss, you've got to be able to just do the hard work and just kind of nip things in the butt with that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, like, how would you describe your leadership style, like here in the studio and outside and stuff?
I mean, I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job so far, but it's like, I try show a lot of empathy and compassion towards people, like depending on where they are. Like if they're wanting to progress with their skills and if they're wanting to like upskill as an artist, like I give them all the time in the world, because that's ultimately what I take the most pride in is I feel like when people want to like level up, that's what I struggled with the most. And I never had anyone apart from my first, you know, real mentor, Gaz. He was the only one who like kind of put his hand out to help me. And that's very hard to find in this industry because there's a lot of people who you've almost got to like prove yourself and then they'll be like, okay, you're proving yourself now, I'll give you a little bit of information, where I don't like that. Like I think it's like, I want to give people an opportunity, you know, and it's, if they come to me and they're genuine, like I need help, I want to improve with my realism, or can you teach me a little bit more about line work? I'm like, credit to you for like wanting to learn. Let's do it. I'll show you the way. And if I see that they put in a genuine effort, that makes me want to work with them more because I can see the person they are. The work ethic that I had, if I see that in someone else, it's like, this is the person that I want to be around, because not only am I uplifting them, but they uplift me because I feel satisfaction of watching their progression.
Totally.
So that's something that I take a lot of pride in.
Okay, yeah, totally. Like you and I have talked about that, like a gratification that you get out of actually mentoring, you know, the artists in here as well. How much of that do you think actually comes from the experience you first had in getting into the industry? Yeah?
A lot of it, that's where it all stems from. And I think as difficult as my path was from start to finish, like whether it was trying to figure out skills, whether it was trying to open up a business, like I had roadblocks my whole career. And it was like, I don't know, it was so confusing. It was like every time I wanted to like level up in any way, it was like there was just all these things in front of me and hurdles that I had to overcome. And I'm like, I understand, like, you know, to be successful, there's going to be obstacles in the way. But it just felt like this industry, it was like they were like set there to make it harder for you. And I didn't like that. It's like, I really, really want to be able to make it, I guess, a lot smoother, so people who actually have the potential, they can blossom a lot faster. Some of the guys that work here, some of the apprentices I've had over the years, I've seen a significant change in the progression as an artist if they're given the right tools early on. And you know, we've got one apprentice here, Lewis, like he is incredible. He did this tat the other day and it was like what he did after 5 months of tattooing, that took me 5 years to do. But he's around the right people. He knows the right equipment. He's been taught the right formulas. Exactly. You are who you surround yourself with. And if you are around people who want to uplift you, people can blossom a lot faster.
Totally. Nice, man. That's great. And so when did you guys first start Omnia? Yeah, like I know you guys have been established here for a number of years now, yeah, but like when did you guys first kick off here?
We kicked off September 2022. So yeah, 3 months of renovating. I gutted the whole entire place and set the whole thing up. And and then we kicked off. It would have been end of August, September, and it was a great progression from the start. We managed to have 3 to 4 people from my old studio, they came and worked with me straight off the bat. Yeah. And then it was like, we had like a nice little core to begin with. Yes. And then as the years gone on, we've probably had like, 50 or 60 artists come through the studio now over the last couple of years. So it's been really successful in that respect.
What do you look for, like, in a budding artist? Yeah. What are some of the traits or, some of the, experience points that you're chasing when you're looking to hire?
Well, I feel I want to see if they've got work ethic and drive. So just with what we brought up before, like I'll kind of give them, if they come to me and they want help and I give them something to work on and I see that they actually take on, the constructive criticism or the homework and they deliver, they're the people I want to work with because they're the people that will shine and blossom. Yes. And I noticed there was a little bit of a gap in the industry as a business owner. And what I noticed is the top tier studios were very like, you've got to be good if you want to work with us. There was never like we'll give you a go. Yes. Even myself at my 7-year mark or 8-year mark, when I was like kind of hopping around Melbourne, trying to figure out, am I going to land myself in a big studio or am I going to open up my own studio? I'd reach out to certain shops and like, some of the biggest studios wouldn't even reply to me. And like, I thought I was a pretty decent artist back then. I wouldn't even get a response.
Yeah, it seems to be like a bit of a take culture almost, it's like, from the artist stepping in, there's a bit of a take, or one-sided take element that takes place. Whereas what you're talking about, with Omnia, is, more of a give and take. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
what can we give you? Yeah. Essentially.
And that's where I thought, I would rather not focus on trying to get like the biggest and best artists here to come work at the studio. I'm like, I'd rather have them be created here. Yes. So then I started to notice like people who were like, just a little bit out of their apprenticeship, but like kind of somewhere in the middle before they like make it into their own style. Yeah. I wanted to work with those sorts of people because that's where I felt and suffered most of my like confusion and pain as an artist. It's like, how do I get to the next level? Yeah. You're constantly trying to look for advice and you're just getting shut down left, right and center. And it's like,
would you say that's the one of the biggest challenges, first starting out in the industry? Like actually getting your foot in the door?
Getting your foot in the door, and then also once your foot's in the door, figuring out your next move. Yeah. As I said, it feels like it's, it's designed, or there's like, even it could be on a global scale to some respect, but it is difficult. And I get that there's obviously, you want to make sure, whoever, it's not the strong survive, you want to make sure who comes in, they're built for the industry. Totally. But with that being said, anyone can figure it out, you know what I mean? You buy a tattoo machine online and you tattoo in your bedroom, and I'm proof in the pudding. I figured out how to do it and then landed in a couple jobs and then progressed from there.
Totally. So, and then when somebody's actually working with you, especially like a new person, like, Lewis, you were describing, 5 months, you said, yeah? Like, what do you see as, some of the most common, I suppose, or almost even technical challenges that somebody faces when they first start learning the industry?
I think it's just like piecing everything together. So when they want a tattoo, like you could be a good drawer, but it's like, it's understanding the application, the formula and the process. So it's like, like how do I lay my inks out? What's the drop formula? What's the pressure? What's the needle depth? It's like it's a formula from start to finish by understanding like, blood safety, just all these different things like, how to not cross-contaminate, your needle choices, your angles, just there's all these little things. And once you like have had a little discussion on all of it and you figure it all out and then you follow, a little formula that I can provide, which is what I did with Lewis, he figured it out quite quickly. I tried to break it down in a simple format. And he just shined because he also wanted to learn though, you know what I mean? So he took it on quite well.
Yeah, awesome, man, awesome. I suppose that's a nice segue. I like to start talking about, Omnia Tattoo Academy. This online course that we've launched together. What in your mind is, one of the most, or one of the value points that course can really offer, considering, those challenges that you were just talking about before?
I think, with my experience and I've been tattooing 15 years, it'll be year 16 this year. And I've been in the game for a long time. Like I'm a veteran but I still feel like I'm a young veteran, right? And I have a modern mind and a modern approach to how I view things. Yeah. And with that being said, my most recent intake that we did for apprentices, I advertised for a shop apprentice. Yeah. We had 103 people apply for the apprenticeship, which was that's I think a very large number of people. Yeah. We did 70 interviews, a lot of incredible portfolios, and I just noticed there was like a lot of the same thing being said from all of these potential apprentices. They were like, if I don't get this apprenticeship, I have seen online education or a course. Is this a good one? You know, they're asking me for advice. Like, would you recommend I do this if you don't give me a job? And I respect people who are wanting to go, you know, figure out things for themselves, because back to my story, that's what I had to do, right? So I noticed there was a lot of that through the interview process. And I've also noticed with the apprentices that I've worked with over the years through every single studio, there's a shorter and shorter amount of patience they've got for delivering what's expected of a natural tattoo apprentice. They kind of get frustrated a bit faster because they're aware that there is more education out there that you can get like that. You can just buy a machine online and figure it out. They're kind of like, why do I have to do all this when I can just buy a course? You know what I mean? I noticed a lot of that. And, you know, I do a lot of research and I study the industry like on a global scale. Like I know like how many tattoo artists work in Victoria. I've got every single studio written down, the amount of artists in there, the amount of styles. I've got everything broken down where I understand the game like in so much detail, right? And I noticed that there was a gap missing where I think education is the way of the future, and it hasn't been done right. There's so many, there's been courses that I've seen that aren't written by professional tattoo artists. They're people who aren't educated, or it's somewhat the blind leading the blind, people who haven't been taught properly. And with my formula that, you know, I've created for a lot of my apprentices here, we cover everything from, you know, blood safety to understanding licensing. You know, my understanding of how this works on a country scale or on a global scale. Every single state around the world or country has different regulations and guidelines. There's no rules. Everyone's apprenticeship is different. But I think with a clean introduction with education through an online course, it's going to allow people to understand how to do a healthy and safe practice at home if you're doing it wrong. It's also going to allow people to be like, okay, if I want to do this, this is what the state requires if I was to start from home or land in a studio. There's so many benefits from it. And then they can also see if like this is for them. You know what I mean? Like so many people have got this idea, like I would love to do this, but they might not be in a position where they can actually commit to doing what is seen as traditional. Okay, like I want to do an apprenticeship. Well, I've got to now work for free for the next 8 to 9 months. What happens if they've got a child?
If somebody's working Monday to Friday, I like to be able to, you know, like derail that or leave that job to be able to pursue, you know, a classroom course or an apprenticeship 3 days a week. It's just not a possibility.
Some people it's possible, but some people it's not. And that's where, you know, my industry experience, not one apprentice that I've had, they have not had the same apprenticeship. Like, because times change, you've got to adapt with how you treat the apprentice at the time. The apprentice that you take on might be living in a certain way where it's like they have to work 3 days a week because they've got bills to pay for. Then they're building themselves up as a tattoo apprentice in the background. Every single apprenticeship is tailored different to someone. It's not the same. Like I can guarantee every single person who works for me or who has worked with me have never had the same apprenticeship. If you can find someone who's had the same apprenticeship, I'd be very surprised. You know, it's facts.
And so do you view the course as, you know, an alternative to an apprenticeship or a supplement to an apprenticeship? Like, where do you see the online course falling into, you know, that early journey for somebody?
I think it's a supplement where it's going to add value and also help build confidence for the person who's wanting to get into it. If you have some understanding, you've had the opportunity to learn the skills and you put yourself in a position where you can educate yourself, you're in a position where you can maybe build your portfolio on the side. And then back to what I did, I had to build my portfolio to land in a studio. A lot of studios now, it's like, nah, like we're not going to give you an apprenticeship. You know, they've got like these, I guess, rules that they like to follow, which is seen as traditional values. However, my entry, I think if you educate and you figure it out on your own and you can have a portfolio, you don't need to rely on a studio to get work. It's all through social media now. If you've got a great network of friends, you're really good at being able to get someone to let you work on their skin, and you can build a portfolio. I guarantee not one studio is going to turn you down if you've got a portfolio that actually shows that you can do work. It's just facts. Like I got 5 people in here who work for me who did their own education prior to coming to the shop.
Wow.
Yes, and that's right. And that's another thing that I noticed. I noticed a lot of people who have been tattooing within let's say the last 5 years, it started to pop up a little bit more where they're seeking their own education to get in. On top of that, there's also like like kind of progress your skills sort of online courses now as well. So there's a missing piece, which is the entry level. And I think if that's done correct, it's going to make the industry a lot smoother in so many ways, safer. And I think it adds so much value where it's going to water out the people who try and go, you know what, this isn't for me. Catch you later. Because as a boss, I got sick of training people and after 6 months realizing that they weren't fit. So I've just invested 6 months of my time trying to help you. And it's like, for me, that's hard as a business owner
as well.
It is.
You know, 100%.
So I think it's like, as a boss, you know, I want to try and make things smoother. And it's like, if you're built for it, you're going to shine. A course is going to show if you've got the talent and potential. And if you persevere through it, it's going to make me feel more confident having someone, you know, hired from that perspective.
On the topic of social media, like, you know, obviously, Luke, you've been in this industry for a very long time. Yeah. Like, you know, you've seen, you know, I suppose where it's come from and, you know, where it's, even I think you've got a pretty good idea of where it's going. Yeah. Like, you know, how is, you know, like you were saying before around portfolios and stuff, but, you know, how is social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those kind of platforms, how has that influenced and changed the tattoo industry in your mind?
Yeah, well, I think something to be very clear about is a lot of tattooers who have been tattooing for, let's say, since 2010, like if you've been tattooing prior to that or you started around then, that's when Instagram first kicked off, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of people need to understand that we were very lucky as artists, and I'm going to call this the gold rush of tattooing.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
People don't understand that because they weren't so like promoted or exposed on a global scale. Once we started seeing tattoos through a screen, 2012, 2013, 2014, 15, leading all the way up to 2020 pre-COVID, I'm sure the whole industry on a global scale can relate to this. We've seen a boom like we've never seen. Wow. Everyone wanted tattoos. Apprentices were booked out for 6 months in advance. Wow. It was crazy. And
do you think that's just because people were online, you know, more during that period and, you know, like those algorithms kicking in?
Correct.
Yeah.
Like when I started understanding how to play the game and how to work, it was back 2010 where I knew if I posted on Facebook at 7 o'clock, everyone was going to see my status or the tattoo that I put up. So from early on, I was figuring out like how to stay relevant and how to, I guess, utilize the tool and device I had in my hand. I knew how to make that work for me to build my career. And again, having a modern mind and, you know, starting quite young, when I was 16, 17, I was able to adapt with like the social media trend that blew up, right?
Where maybe some other artists wouldn't have been able to, wouldn't have been able to maybe capitalize upon that.
Yeah. And that's where it's like the gold rush of tattooing. It was like, you know, if you started your social media platform back then, you had a lot more success with building your following and like having more exposure. You know, it was a lot easier. Yeah. But now it's a lot difficult for someone to kind of come in and build that because, you know, the topic or the term gets thrown around, it's oversaturated with tattoo artists or this and that. It's just everyone's desensitized to seeing tattoos. You know, we've seen it a lot, right? It's about how you promote and market yourself. And it's also about how can you stand out and how can you be different? And that's something where I feel like, you know, as the years have gone on, I'm constantly like in my mind, just for myself, I constantly have to move the goalpost in a way where I'm never doing anything the same for more than 2-3 months. I always make sure I'm figuring out a new way to promote, figuring out a new way to, I guess, just keep my brand relevant and also try to find new clients. Like I'm very blessed that I've been able to build a very successful clientele over the years, and that's a mixture of hard work plus the people that I've been fortunate to meet and network. You know, you meet one great client, they've got a network of 10 people who are all successful.
You've got some pretty fantastic clients.
My clientele is incredible.
Like pretty awesome celebs that come in here, yeah?
And again, like that's just been from compounding the quality of work that I started to do over the years. Also, I learned that it's not about, you know, just being a good artist. It's about providing a beautiful space. Like I knew that, like I've been booked out, and without trying to be arrogant with this delivery, I've been booked out for over 12 years, like a year in advance. Like I have sustained so much work for so long. I'm booked out all of this year still, and I got a waiting list for next year. And at like the 8th or 9th year mark, I'm like, I need to like create something for my clients who have contributed to my success, which is why I built this studio. To provide a space so when people come in, it's like, how nice is this? You know, we're you know, top floor, you can see views of like all the city. And I wanted to do that to give back to my clients who have contributed to my success from being here. But then what happened from that, it's like, it just brought more successful clients in. So yeah, a lot of the clientele now, it's like they're killing it in their own way. They're all, you know, multimillionaires, successful in their business ventures. You know, some are athletes, some are celebs, some are, you know, in the corporate world.
It's incredible.
You know, and there's just so many, like I tattoo doctors, I tattoo lawyers, you know, it's crazy.
Yes.
So it's all come down to just like the way you market, the way you are as a person, the space that you provide, the quality of work that you have. It's like, it is a whole formula now. And just to, you know, understand the gold rush of tattooing, it blew up, but that was because it was more of everyone was just seeing tattoos pop up on the phone, and it's now it's different. It's you gotta be able to cover all aspects to be successful. And that's what I think a lot of people are unaware of now. It's like, you gotta do all the 1%ers if you want to stand out. It's difficult to make it in this game now.
It's interesting, yeah, because I think COVID, you know, for a lot of industries provided, you know, some real headwinds, like, tailwinds. For education, it was the same thing, like, you know, everyone was stuck at home, everyone wanted to do, you know, online training. And now, very similarly to what you're describing, what we're finding is the people, the businesses that are innovating and trying to do new things and, you know, reinvesting in, you know, the course, the product and stuff like that are the ones that are actually, you know, still continuing to grow and finding success. You know, the ones that aren't, you know, that maybe just, you know, kind of tailwind off the back of, you know, some of that COVID stuff, you know, have since shut up. Yeah. So yeah, totally.
Well, I definitely agree with that. When you mentioned COVID is like where, you know, there was tailwinds with like online education and stuff like that, that completely aligns with like my observation of the industry over the last 5 years, where I've noticed everyone who's entered into the industry over the last 5 years are the ones who are all seeked online education, because it's become so acceptable on a global scale. Every industry is heading in that direction, and you can't avoid that. It's inevitable. And I think you've always got to be able to adapt and be prepared for change. It's like anything in any industry. You know, no one likes change. However, it's inevitable. And that's where it's like, I believe, I'm so strong with my opinion that this is where the industry is going. And a lot of big artists would know around the world, there's these master classes that you can do. You could advance your skills. Like it's out there. There's, you know, entry level courses, you know, in different countries around the world. But I think it's just it's the beginning of it now. You know what I mean?
What do you really want the online course and you know, the Omnia Tattoo Academy? What do you really want that to achieve? Yeah, like, you know, what are you hoping the impact that course and that school actually has on the market?
Well, I think first and foremost is like giving people an opportunity to see if this is what they want to do. Yes. And also the people who are built for this industry and the people who are going to shine. Yeah. This is the keys, man. Like, go for it. Don't go through what I've gone through. Like, if I explain some of the stories I've gone through in detail, like, it would blow your mind. But I just think people being able to start off, come into the industry and have a smooth introduction and then blossom a lot faster, it's going to add benefit to the industry, because you're going to have the next generation come through. You're going to see all the new, you know, tattooers come through and create new styles. And I think a lot of people need to understand as well, the evolution of tattooing styles are constantly changing. Right now, what's big, in my opinion, like, you know, this is the world that I see, black and gray and fine line are the two biggest styles. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, that's all I see online. That's what it seems to be, you know, everyone's getting tattooed. So I think right now, people coming into it and they're doing that, they're gonna continue to, you know, flourish in that style. In 5 years' time, then it's gonna like force the next trend of tattooing to come through. It might bring back Japanese, it might bring back traditional tattoos. Like, in my opinion, that's what I see. It's like the evolution is going to keep changing. Yeah. But I also want to create like great quality artists, which is what I take pride in here in the shop. But I want to be able to provide not only an entry level, but I want to provide a masterclass where I can say, okay, you're doing well. Yeah. Here's, you know, my black and gray portrait masterclass, or here's like a black and gray masterclass on how to do all styles. And I'd love to be able to have an umbrella of like, you know, every style of tattooing possible. You know, you can learn this, you can learn that, and figure out what you want to do. Maybe do 3 different forms of education and create your own hybrid, unique style, and see what artists you can turn into from there. I believe, like, I know that's the way it's going, and it's that is what it is.
And there's certainly been some voices, you know, in the space, or, you know, some you know, businesses in the space that you know, have had you know, maybe some negative things to say about like online tattoo training. Yeah, like, you know, what have you experienced thus far? You know, with some of those opinions. Yeah.
Yep.
And I suppose, what do you say to some of those opinions? Yeah, like, or you know, how do you deal with some of those opinions?
Well, first of all, I understand exactly like, you know, where a lot of people are coming from. You know, as I said, there's, in my view and in my world, there's like kind of two ways to get into the industry. There's a traditional apprenticeship where you get an apprenticeship and so on, or you can be a scratcher like me and just figure it out in your backyard and go into it from there, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like the idea of people just being able to have the keys given to them because they did it real hard, you know what I mean? And I almost feel like there's like, I get it, but at the same time, it's like, why should other people have to suffer because you suffered? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, my view is like, everyone deserves a chance. Let's help each other. Let's bring each other up and let's all work together.
Yeah.
That's how I've seen it. But I feel like a lot of the hate and a lot of the old school artists that seem to have, you know, had something to say, like when obviously we did a bit of a soft launch for it.
Yeah.
It's just, some of their points just, it was more concerned around the blood safety. It was more concerned around, you know, them not being educated properly. And it was kind of like, do you think I would teach people not to do it right? Of course we're going to teach blood safety. Of course we're going to teach the licensing. Like we've linked up with all the different councils in every state, and we understand all the health and safety protocols. We understand all the licensing agreements for New South Wales, for Queensland. Like individually, we've done all the research and everything is all linked all together. Like this is what a lot of them don't know. And that's where I think a lot of the hate come from, the uncertainty and also not being completely educated on what we're trying to deliver.
Yes.
So I think I get why the hate come from it, but it's just, it is being done right. And I think obviously once they understand that, they might feel a little bit more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's interesting because we experience the same thing with beauty. Yeah. You know, because we've got, you know, a number of beauty courses. And if you went back 5, 6, 7 years ago, you know, to learn beauty online, you know, was completely taboo. Yeah. You'd find in some cases, like, you know, some of those, well, like more so RTOs, like, you know, registered training organizations, you know, some of those ones that have been around forever, like were some of the loudest voices as well, you know, saying things like, oh, you know, you can't learn eyelash extensions online. And it's funny because now, like, you know, 6, 7 years later, it's one of the most common ways, online learning is one of the most common ways people get into
I believe
those
that.
spaces.
I believe that.
You know?
I believe that.
And it's just, I wonder if it's going to be the same for tattooing. But, you know, what I always think about, and I'm sure you agree, is, you know, online learning as a concept is not perfect. You know, just like, you know, face-to-face learning is not perfect. Just like what you're describing as, you know, that entry to the industry currently is not perfect. So, you know, I certainly don't look at it as like a silver bullet. But I think about, you know, and you touched on this, I think about, you know, the people that it can really benefit, you know, the person who's working, you know, Monday to Friday, you know, supporting their family, that doesn't have the ability, you know, to go into a classroom 3 days a week, you know, the mum at home looking after kids, you know. And I think for those individuals, you know, exact same as beauty and what we're seeing success with in the beauty space, I definitely think could be the same for online tattooing as well.
I completely agree.
So, Luke, I'm keen to know, man, you know, having created the course, you know, talk to us a little bit about the mechanics of the course, like how it actually works, like what a student could actually expect when they're in it and they're studying.
Yeah. So once you, like, obviously purchase the course, you know, you'll have your kit sent out to you, and the kit that we've actually designed is really nice. It's a mixture of some of the, I guess, bits and pieces that you would need to be able to successfully do a fine line tattoo. So we've chosen a machine that allows fine line to be achievable. We've also chosen certain needles, you know, certain stencil paper, stencil stuff and all the rest, you know, that we would use here to allow us to do a successful tat. So obviously we put a lot of thought into that, and like anything, you know, we're always going to try and improve as we go, but I think we've done a very good job, you know, to begin with this, which I think we're going to have great success with the kit itself.
Totally, I've seen the kit. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it looks great. And also like the actual system itself, you know, when students are logging in and they're seeing like all the different assessments and all the tasks, you know, that we've got that they need to, you know, obviously undertake in order to successfully complete this course. It's a very smooth system from start to finish, covering all topics and all bases that you need to, you know, obviously understand how to execute a fine line tattoo.
Not a little course as well. Yeah, like, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, when they think of like, you know, an online course can think of, you know, maybe something like a Udemy course or something like that. There's a lot of meat in this course.
There's a lot of depth, there is. And to be honest, like I could have made this double. We could have made this double the length or triple. I've got so much like info that I would love to share, but I think to keep it simple, and as I said, simple learning is the most effective learning when it comes to trying to execute a tattoo, because there's so much uncertainty. You don't know what's enough or what's not enough. But with this being said, we've made it, you know, very smooth. All the points that we make are the most important things to learn and understand. But it's so practical. You can do it off your, like obviously a lot of the reading and, you know, all the, I guess, information that we provide. You can read it off your phone. You can obviously do it on your laptop. It's you can do it remotely wherever you want. It's super smooth.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose that's the biggest thing that we've seen with, you know, our beauty courses is that whole flexibility thing. You know, like a lot of our students, you know, will be, watching some of, you know, the instructional videos like while they're in bed. And then, you know, the very next morning they'll wake up and they'll do an assessment. They'll pull out their kit that was based upon that video that they just watched. Yeah.
No, I think it's going to be really cool.
Nice. Hey, and with respect to just online learning generally, yeah, like, you know, have you personally done any online learning?
Yeah, I have. So there's a couple of courses that I brought early in 2020. This is when I first started to notice that the courses were becoming a thing. And I got this guy's course called Oscar Akamoro. It was like, you know, an advanced course for like conceptual style art and stuff like that. So I brought that, and that was really cool, you know, like, but he went into depth on like how to be a little bit more organized, you know, from just the way you like, you know, have everything organized from your needle choices to the way you like, I guess, file your designs, just how to make yourself more efficient and smooth from like the design process. Like I just learned a lot from him, and I wasn't even expecting to learn that from the course. But this is the thing, like these courses have got so much juicy information in there. Like you might be an advanced tattooer, thinking that what's like an entry-level course going to provide. But I think most artists who don't have an ego would understand that you can still learn something off an apprentice. And that's where the stigma of being an old school artist thinking that you know best and then you can't take anything from a young, you know, new entrant. That's what I've never done. I look at anyone and think, what can I learn from this person and what can they teach me? And that's where even as an advanced or like, you know, 15 years in, I'd say I'm a veteran at tattooing, and like I know I do a good job at it. With that being said, it's like I still will take on education myself to further along my skills, because you never stop learning.
That's right.
And that's what I just think is so important, is, you know, even as an advanced artist, still taking on, you know, more to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for somebody like yourself, you know, I think one of the cool things about online learning is that, you know, just like, you know, some of those other examples we've been talking about, you know, for you and your busy schedule, that provides you with an opportunity to keep upskilling.
Correct.
At your own pace.
Correct.
And stuff like that as
but,
well.
But even like my algorithm like is filled with education, but it's more to do with Procreate and other things. Like I've got all these like videos that come up, how to hack Procreate and how to make your life smoother. It's like, it's just there. Like you see videos of people uploading how they're doing their like close-ups of tattooing. There's like small micro drops of education everywhere. You know what I mean? So
there's some incredible videos on YouTube already of people displaying these skills.
Yeah, I was doing YouTube videos in like 2016, 2017, like, you know, watching artists like tattoo. So it's completely everywhere. Like it's been something that's been global for, as I said, 10 years. As the rise of social media and YouTube, there's forms of education in small ways and large ways. It's the way of the future.
100%, man. The way it's moving, the way it's progressing, and who knows, literally might be one of the, you know, the primary ways people learn. I think it's tattooing, you know, moving forward.
I think like there's pros and cons to both sides. I really do believe that, but I think just the main driver for progression is picking up a machine and tattooing, whether you're making mistakes or not. That experience on the skin is the only way you're going to learn. You can have the best mentor next to you sometimes and they'll do this and you might not be able to figure it out. It's like you just got to sit there and you just got to keep on going and going, and eventually you learn the mechanics of it once the needle's in the skin. So
I love that, man.
Fine.
So something we talk about quite regularly in beauty is, you know, the establishment of, you know, a client list, you know, either from home or like, you know, from, you know, like a mobile kind of like facility or whatever. as a mechanism to get employment in a salon. You know, so it's like if you're walking into a salon and you're looking for a job, to be able to walk in there, because there's other people you're competing against, obviously, to be able to walk in there, you know, with, you know, a pre-established client list that you can bring into that salon, or, you know, that you can showcase success with, you know, is a really important part, you know, of being able to get your foot in the door.
100%.
Same in tattooing.
Yes, 100%. That's what it is. Like, I can guarantee you, if someone like approaches a studio and they have all of the credentials, so to speak, with all of that, you're booked out, you've got a great portfolio, you're a great person, you present yourself well, there's no chance you're going to get knocked back. If someone knocks you back, like, and you've done a tattoo course, send them to me. Yeah. But I don't think that's possible. Like, at the end of the day, you can't knock someone back if they've done the work and they're in a position where they've taken the initiative to learn and they've done it in a professional manner. And we teach that. And that's what I'm trying to teach. You know what I mean? So I think that's something that students should expect, is if you are going to go down this path and you just follow your passion and keep trying and build your portfolio, you're not going to lose. You're not going to lose.
Next, yeah. Like, what message would you have, you know, for students, you know, either looking to undertake the online course, or, you know, who are studying the online course? You know, what message would you be giving them around motivation, or, you know, how to, you know, make sure that they can, you know, stay committed to their studies and stuff like that? Yeah. Like,
well, I mean, it's just the classic, like, don't give up, like, do it, start the course. And everything you learn, you just follow through. If you're committed and you're confident and you keep on pushing through and you build your portfolio, you will find your place in the industry, as I did. It doesn't guarantee an apprenticeship, you know what I mean? But what this does is it gives you the keys and the understanding of everything it takes. And the rest is up to you, because that's ultimately what it is. Everyone in this industry, it's a free for all. You know, everyone has had to climb their way to the top, or climb their way into the industry in a way that it's been different, you know, to every person next to you in this industry. No one's had the same entry level, but the key to getting to a position where you'll feel satisfied is by showing up every day and doing everything right. The 1%ers, treating your clients right, using social media, as that's the most important thing these days, doing good work, presenting yourself well, and just overall making the whole experience from start to finish for a client, or even the studio that you work at, you make them feel like they can enjoy your presence and you bring value. There's all those little details that's what creates a good tattoo artist. It's not about doing good work anymore. People want to sit down and have an 8-hour conversation with me because we unpack a massive amount. It's like therapy for some.
You're like a therapist.
It is, but for me and my clients, I'll have clients where they're touching base about my life and I'm like getting things off my chest. But that relationship that I've built with a lot of people is what also makes the experience so beautiful, because you develop amazing friendships, as I did with your brother. When I first met Jason, we started tattooing and we got onto the conversation about a tattoo course. You know, when he was telling me about how he was doing online learning this was in 2020 when I first met your brother. And we started, you know, diving deep into, there's a gap in the industry with this being done right, or not being done right, sorry. And we spoke about it for years, but it wasn't the right time. And that's where it's like, as I've noticed a large number of increasing courses that aren't done to the level that we've done it, it's like, now's the time to do it, and now's the time to do it right. And that's where, you know, our friendship led to this business partnership that we've got together now. So.
Yeah, like, you know, I don't want to spruik or anything, but like, honestly, the course is fantastic. It is. Yeah, it's actually like, you know, we've been, you know, building courses now for 5-6 years. Yeah, and I would argue that it's one of, if not the best courses that we've actually built. Yeah, so really exciting.
Yeah,
really exciting.
Nah, looking forward to it.
And what do like, I mean, what's next? Yeah, like what do you view as, like, you know, next steps for, you know, the industry, next steps for yourself? You know, what's kind of front of mind for you as, you know, a next opportunity?
I mean, in terms of next opportunity, I think just what we're doing at the moment is like the one that we're focusing on, or the one that, you know, as a team here at Omnia, we're focusing on just doing this education right and doing it at a level and at a standard that is acceptable and also super professional, you know, from an industry standard, which is what we're trying to create. But yeah, the direction of just everything in general, like, I feel like moving forward, it's a new world we're in. The gold rush of tattooing is, in my opinion, it's over. And when I say over, that's the social media boom that blew it up. Tattoos are still huge. Everyone loves them, but it's now about how can you stand out and how can you make your stuff look different. So it's there's a different form of marketing involved. We're into a different world where it's like left up to the individual, and it's also left up to the person, you know, to creating something for themselves. And it's, yeah, I feel like it's the Wild West right now. You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like in the Australian culture anyway, it's like, it's changed so much. And I feel like it's on a global scale though, like everyone's kind of confused. It hasn't been the same. Everyone's trying to figure out what the next move is. You can see all online, like everyone's doing content that's not even really tattoo related now to try get work. It's like, I feel like a lot of people are lost, and we're just trying to, like, you know, recalibrate from what it used to be. But I think it's going to be a few more years until things kind of, you know, start to blossom again. And I think right now, you got to just do things in a way where you can just make yourself shine as an individual. That's all it comes down to.
Gotcha. Awesome, man. Nice. Excellent. Excellent. Beautiful. Well, Luke, thanks so much for chatting to me today, man. You know, I'm really, really excited to, you know, be working with you on the online course. You know, all of us here at Learning Online, you know, mate, we're actually a little bit in awe of you, to be honest, man. Like, you know, your success in the industry is amazing, and you know what you've done with this course, honestly, is fantastic. You know, I think what it's going to be able to provide students with, as far as a vehicle to be able to get into the industry, or, you know, to, you know, as you've said a couple of times, you know, to be able to, you know, see if the industry is suitable for them. Like, mate, it's fantastic. So,
thank you, man.
It's not beautiful.